competitions where there's a lot of pressure, also try and stay level, knowing that it really matters and it's okay for it to matter whether you win or lose as a Christian, but that it's not everything and it doesn't define me and my job. Yeah, just hopefully be modelling something that should love this is important to me, but it's not the most important thing and there's bigger things outside of it.
Hello and welcome to Onside, where faith meets football, brought to you by Good News Broadcasting. I'm Eamonn. I'm joined by my co-host and friend Wana. And on this episode, we have Fran Clarkson joining us. She's the Women's Pathway Physiotherapist lead at the FA. So she's here to give us some insight into what God is doing in the women's game. But as well as that, she's here to talk about how her faith plays an integral role in the work she does alongside England's top female footballers. So thanks for joining us, Fran. How are you?
Yeah, really well, thank you. Thanks very much for having me. Great to meet you both.
Good stuff. And so we'll start with the two questions we always ask every guest who comes on this show. And so what football team do you support?
Leeds United. Always have done.
Leeds
Yeah.
United, come on.
Yeah.
Leeds United.
So me and my older sister, we were born in Peterborough, but my parents moved back up to Leeds where they'd actually been at uni and where they'd wanted to be. So I was only about 18 months old when we moved back to Leeds. So yeah, Leeds through and through. That's where I grew up.
Interesting. Well, as a United fan, Leeds and United don't tend to get on well.
This podcast now.
Yeah, this is great to meet you, Fran.
We're Christians, so we've got to put that aside for a moment. What's kind of your best footballing memory? That might be as kind of a fan of Leeds, or maybe kind of within your role. Like, what's your best footballing memory?
Well, I'll give you a couple. It's probably not a memory in the sense that I was present at this one. But I think just the season, or one of the seasons where at Leeds we had Tony Yeboah and he scored that incredible goal against Liverpool. Yeah, that's an amazing goal. I'm going to give you too many here because then I have just thought I was then at a game. We got free tickets through school and I think it was Liverpool again. I think Leeds beat Liverpool 4-3 at Elland Road and Mark Viduka. He either got a hat-trick or he got a couple. That was great. And then I'm going to flip to my greatest experience working in football. Undoubtedly, the amazing privilege I've had in the last year to work up with and cover the Lionesses, being at the World Cup in Australia this summer was, an incredible experience to be involved with a squad and a team at that sort of level and competition.
I must say, one of my worst footballing memories is when Leeds beat us in the Cup 1-0.
Jermaine Beckford.
Yeah, that was horrible. I remember it as if it was yesterday. It was. I can't remember how long. It must have been like 2007 or something ridiculous like that.
But that's how sad it is for us, though, that became such a massive thing. Like the rivalry, I'm probably going to offend Leeds fans here now, it is a little bit one-sided, really. It's more us, I think, being a bit jealous.
Well, you're back on the rise. I keep an eye on the Championship, and so I know you guys are coming back up. So.
Hopefully so.
So tell us a little bit about kind of your journey of faith. Like, how did you kind of become a Christian? Yeah, kind of tell us about that journey.
Yeah, so very fortunate I grew up in a Christian family, so always went to church. That was what we did on Sunday as a family. So probably from a young age, would always have had an awareness that there is a God. And if someone asked me probably when I was younger, are you a Christian? I would possibly have just said yes, because I think as a younger person, my understanding of what that meant was just that I went to church, went to Sunday school, went to youth group. I played a lot of sport growing up. So I played football, but cricket was my main sport and a bit of hockey. And sort of mid-teens, early teens, it started to become more common for the women's teams that sport would be on a Sunday. So in my mind, again, parents were really supportive. I had this thought of, well, hang on a minute. If I'm a Christian, that means going to church, doing this. God's most important. So I should be being in church and not doing my sport. And it started to bring a real tension of, I think the Holy Spirit was starting to reveal to me my need for him, and that actually being a Christian wasn't about the things that I did, but it was about faith in what Jesus had done for me. But still, I had this feeling like, but actually you're telling me that if I'm really following Christ, I want to be in church and I have to be in church over anything else on a Sunday. Started to get involved with Christians in sport as well around that time as a student, and at their camps. I was just too old to go to their camp when I found out about them. And for the first time there, I sort of had explained and understood the doctrine of worship. Therefore, offer your bodies as spiritual acts of worship, holy and pleasing, and it's offering your whole life. God is interested in every moment of my life, not just Sunday morning, not just Sunday evening, but anything and everything that I do, say, think is in response to what he's done for me. And for me and my family, related to that, and feeling that the gifts of sport, the enjoyment, the person he's made me to be, that I could and was worshipping him doing that. And so we did fall the side of, actually, for us, Sunday sport, it was okay, and it was something that I was going to pursue, whilst keeping it in its rightful place, and recognising I was playing it for him, whilst battling with the whole, wanting to be good, get into squads. And then, just from there, so I probably professed faith like 16, 17 years old, and then just continued on from there.
That's such a great answer as well, of the nuance of kind of pursuing something that doesn't necessarily fit the stereotypical church life formula.
Well, no, I was just going to say, I think it's a really hard thing, and it's probably one of those areas of being a Christian, individually or in family life, where different families and people will probably fall on a different side of things with their own strong convictions, and I think that's okay. And one of the things that I know Christians in sport have done in recent years is they support young performance athletes and their parents, and they specifically have groups to try and, with something that's quite a niche and a specific challenge for those young performance athletes who may then not be at the youth group or not at Sunday church as often, and for those parents trying to support their children. They recognise that as let's try and support these young people and the families to still pursue Christ, even though their pattern of a normal week to week may not look the same.
Yeah, really good. So as Eamonn said, you're the Women's Pathway Physiotherapy Lead. But for the layman's out there like us, what does that mean? Because I think physiotherapy is kind of in the brain of the football fan.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's been an eye-opener for me as well. So I started this job 2 years ago, and I came into this job from having been in the club world of actually county cricket, men's county cricket. And the difference for a physio, when you work with a club and when you work with an international squad, club, you see your players day in, day out. You're taking them through rehab from day one of injury to getting back on the pitch. International, you see those players intermittently through the year for 10 days on a FIFA window or a UEFA window tournament camp, or longer when you've got a tournament in the summer. But in reality, the impact that you have on them is slightly different. You're not taking them through their rehab, that's club. But we are having to deal with them, what we'd call more the acute injuries, trying to work out, is it an injury that can be turned around, recovered from, treated, and they can still take part in that 10-day window or the tournament as a whole? And then the organisation as a whole, the FA, has sort of a bigger remit, really, to be looking into, the development of women's football, looking into the injury and illness research, pushing that forward, working with the governing bodies, UEFA, FIFA, perhaps other nations as well, in how can we, with the way that the women's football is just growing and progressing in terms of the skill, speed, pace, the density of fixtures, all these kind of things, we have to be constantly analysing, reassessing, pushing forward, and trying to help these young female footballers develop in a system that is just naturally behind the men's and boys pathway that has them training and playing from 8 upwards, probably. Yeah. So we're really at an exciting time, and the FA are doing a great job at the moment, really trying to develop those bottom pathways, also to include one of the aspects we know that can be improved and stronger, the diversity and the demographic of where those centres are for youth and development pathways. We've got a big responsibility to do that. I suppose from a physio head, it sits more with the, injury and illness research. What are we seeing in our footballers? How can we then assess that, perhaps do research, and then feed that back to club practitioners and just help move the game forward and improve the health and well-being of our footballers.
One of the things that you mentioned earlier was you kind of connected work and worship and sport and worship kind of together, that they're not kind of separate. So now, as someone who obviously works at a high level and within the world of sport, how does your faith play a part in the work that you do? And how does it play a part kind of big picture, and then maybe kind of even just day to day as well?
So I think big picture, I love the fact that I can rest in the knowledge that God's made me who I am, and that he's given me the desires and the passions and the interests that I have. And I, to this point, have been able to pursue those in a job and a career that I love. You know, I love sport, I love people, and to therefore be in the job where you're trying to help people be the best they can be. And it is largely the physical side of it, but undoubtedly it becomes the emotional and the psychological side as well when you've got injured players. But yeah, so from a big picture, my faith in day-to-day life, work and everything, it informs, it gives me my identity. I know I can rest in that, and that I'm free to just go out and live my life serving Christ, knowing that outcomes, things that I do at work don't define me, whether that's a positive thing or a negative thing. So I've got a freedom to just work and try and, you know, love the people around me, be that the players, be that the staff that I work alongside and see more regularly, and just strive to be a great representation of Christ in that environment where there may not be any others, and there are some. And then I suppose in the specifics of just making sure that they know as well that you have a genuine care for them as a person, not just as a ex-footballer who plays for whoever and, you know, has this many followers on Instagram or TikTok or whatever, but genuinely show them. Be honest and vulnerable yourself in terms of who you are as a person, and just make sure that they know that you're genuinely in that role to look after them and prepare them the best for whatever they need to do in a training session, in a match. And yeah, I think sometimes in thinking back to examples of finals or semi-finals or competitions where there's a lot of pressure, also try and stay level, knowing that it really matters, and it's okay for it to matter whether you win or lose as a Christian, but that it's not everything and it doesn't define me and my job. And then maybe help them show that sort of consistency and stability of character. Not to, I don't jump off the bench sometimes with the other staff, but yeah, just hopefully be modeling something that should love this is important to me, but it's not the most important thing, and there's bigger things outside of it, if that's hopefully given the broad and the narrow.
Yeah, that's really good, because I think that shows the application of your faith in real life. Because I think sometimes we think that, you know, if I'm a Christian and I'm a Christian in my workplace, then I have to come with my Bible and I have to come with, you know, here's the verse for the day, as well as your medicine, you know, or your treatment. But actually, it's the life that you live, isn't it? As you've talked about, is that you're showing people that I live a certain way. You kind of talked about your work in the club side with cricket and now with football. Have you found any difference in how you approach those things, or did you find that they're pretty similar environments?
I think in some ways there's some similarities in that, I guess in both environments it took a little while, if you like, in terms of just the natural conversations and relationships I was building at work. Certainly more so at England with staff, because I see more staff more regularly than do see the players. It took a little bit of time to maybe build up those conversations where it got to the point of, usually it's from the what did you do at the weekend, went to church, which gives the question mark, and it either stops there or someone pursues it a little bit more.
Yeah.
So I think in both times it just takes a little while, like it does for you to get to know anyone. And then I think that the response to that is just, I've been, again, fortunate that it's largely been either just not interested, but politely not interested, so don't push it. And then others who are more interested and ask, you know, well, what does that actually mean?
I think a lot of people find it really challenging to express their faith. Some environments, they kind of restrict what you can talk about and things like that, especially if you're working in hospitals. You can't just go around saying, oh, I'm a Christian, can I pray for you, or whatever else? And you have to wait for the person to kind of ask you or something like that. So is there any restrictions around that, and how do you kind of talk about your faith and everything within the workplace?
Yeah, I think, I mean, I'd probably say, first of all, I don't think there's any restrictions. Very recently, in fact, the organisation, the FA, I don't know if you'd seen it or read about it, had a Faith in Football event at Wembley. And I think the aim of that event, specifically at this point, it was Christianity, but they will also, it's a multi-faith, recognising that it's a multi-faith workplace. And so often, you know, we'll get internal communications when there's particular festivals or celebrations, and just encouraging if staff want to sit in on, you know, talks or understanding more. So like across the organisation, there's a recognition that personal faith is part of many of the people they employ. So in that sense, not restricted, and a fairly open arena at times to talk about and express it. And then For me, myself, I think maybe it comes back to some things I was already saying, in that I think it's a combination of, at the early phase of getting to know people, it probably comes a bit more from those kind of conversations where you may choose to drop something and say what you've been doing, which hints that you do something a bit different, i.e. you go to church, and that can stimulate conversation. And then as that builds, so another one, for example, a friend noticed maybe something trivial. She was like, "You never actually swear, do you?" Now, I'm not saying here, yeah, if you swear, you're not a Christian, of course not. But I feel personally quite a strong way of those conversations being able to happen is that with the help of the Holy Spirit, you're living differently in an environment where you pray and you hope that Christ working through you shows something different. You might tangibly not notice it, you just think you're being you, but then you trust that, the power of Jesus and the change he brings, if you trust in him and just trying to submit to living for him, that it'll show because of him. And therefore it will just engender those little questions about what might seem trivial, but then you get to the layers of, you then get opportunity to just have conversation. And like I say, you should, again, it says in Thessalonians, isn't it? I think it's talking more about Christians rather than with those who don't believe, but it talks about sharing your life with others. And I think that's the big thing. It's often, it comes more naturally through that you're talking about. I invited a friend and a partner, they don't live massively near where I am, but we had a church community carols thing, and I just invited them, do they want to come? And then they came and they were really interested. It's like, oh, so this is where just the small usual things of, this is my life, this is who I am. And they remarked on it, said, oh, it was great that that's quite vulnerable for you, really, to invite us into a part of your life that isn't really working. So the fact they can recognize that as well, I think I'd just encourage anyone in wherever they're working is, trust that God is at work as well. He's working and he knows the people he wants to call to himself, and you've just got to be faithful, be there. And also a key thing, which sometimes maybe we don't like to do, is pray for opportunity, because we probably know if we start praying and really focus on it, he's probably going to present those opportunities. We've got to take them. Sometimes these sort of phrases get used in secular society as well. Is like, there's only one you, and it's not like that, oh, you do you and only you. But there's actually some truth in that it's really special that God has created you uniquely with everything about you that makes you you. Yes, as you journey through with him, there's things that he wants to refine and change and develop, but don't take away from the fact that only you can be you, be in the places that you are. So trust in that, rest in that, enjoy that, and hopefully just enjoy what that brings with your friendships, the work you have. Yeah, so I'd say it sort of comes, hopefully, a bit, my view on it is the naturalness, without allowing that to become I'll just wait and see if someone asks me a question.
Yeah, that's really good. So at this point where you're at, how does engaging with the church community look like? As you mentioned earlier, obviously when you were especially playing sport, it was tougher to do that. So what does that look like now? And do you find it easy still, or is it still a challenge to be able to engage in a Christian community?
Do you know, in this role, it's easier than when I was in a club role. So in a club role, in cricket, you'd have 6 months, April to September, where you just have loads of fixtures. Some would be across a weekend. I might be away somewhere else in the country, working on Sundays, 8 till 8. Whereas now working for an international organisation where players and camps, they happen maybe once every 5-6 weeks. And in that 10-day period, I'll be working on a Sunday that falls in it. But the rest of the time, because the nature of the role is now, it is still physio delivery and hands-on, but it's also now a bit more the organisation, strategy, sort of that level of it. Some of it is almost more like a Monday to Friday job. Okay. So I actually have much more ability now in this role to engage with my church, still help out with the youth, my small group. So actually that side of my life is now a little more easier. There are times, there might be little windows where I'm not able to be there. But again, what's great is church is really supportive of that. There's no sort of judgment or to be like 3 strikes and you can't help out with youth anymore because you've missed a couple. Which is great. And yeah, at times it was tricky. But again, what was helpful was being honest with people at church if it was difficult and struggling, and then them committing to pray for you. Also having friends who have either played at a certain level of sport or been engaged in it and understand then the subtle nuance of when you are away and you're in a sports environment, having Christian friends on both those sides, just your general church family at home, and then those that maybe understand the sport world a bit more specifically as well, being intentional as well with keeping up with them, chatting, catching up, praying when those times have been a bit more tricky. Definitely.
Yeah, that's really good. And I think one of the things that we've been hearing a lot when we've been talking to people and asking that question specifically is the intentionality of it, of being really intentional, because it is tricky with schedules and whatever else. I know you say now it's more of a 9 to 5, but being intentional with meeting with God's people and getting stuck into community as much as possible, I think is really good and really important. One of the perceptions I think with football in general is that it's not really a great environment for Christians, just because of the kind of whole culture surrounding it, from a fan's perspective as well as from a players and coaches and staff perspective. One of the things we've been really encouraged by with doing these some of these interviews is just kind of hearing the different stories and the different people who are involved in football, who are Christians, who are kind of shining a light in those areas. And so within kind of the women's game, is there a big Christian community within the women's game from players and staff, or is it kind of fairly small?
My awareness at the moment is I think it's fairly small. I know that there is a big and growing community within the men's game. And I know partly or largely through connections with Christians in sport that there's coaches, particularly. I know that they do work with the players as well. But it's a question they've asked of me as well with the links I've had with them is, are there others? My awareness right now, I know of a couple of colleagues at work who work, too many work in the men's side who are Christians. But yeah, I'm not at the moment not aware of coaches, players, other staff, certainly not in my immediate vicinity in women's football.
So just as we wrap up, we're just really thankful, first of all, that you've been able to speak with us. It's been really refreshing to hear your perspective. So what is exciting you about what God's doing, either in football, in your role specifically, or just through you in your work? And then how can we as hosts and also listeners of this be praying for you and your work and just see, the impact that you're having is great already. And we just want to see that become even greater.
Yeah, I think, I am really encouraged by hearing that there is a lot of growth and meetings and conversations, certainly on the men's side of the football, the footballers themselves and staff, and seeing, organisations or whatever you call them, sort of the ballers in God, that's become quite, I'm sure you've heard of that, that's becoming quite prevalent and quite front obvious. Like there's some real good examples of footballers in the men's game being happily open in sharing who Christ is and what he's done for them. So that's really exciting. But also I've had opportunity to be honest in that environment that I'm a Christian. So many people that I work with know that. And again, that's maybe just that early presenting that, leaving that out there. And then you hope and pray that if there's circumstance or things that you do or how you are, God will start to help them maybe make that connection and be like, maybe she's different, hopefully in a good way, not a weird way, but she's different. And it just sparks more opportunity to have those deeper sort of life conversations. And I've probably seen it a little bit already. So yeah, I'm thankful that looking ahead to this year, I get the opportunity to just keep hopefully now serving. I will be serving in that environment, continuing to build on those relationships. And then so in terms of prayer, it is probably for just a security in like confidence in ability and taking on this role now full time. It is quite daunting. As much as it's exciting, I know it holds quite a lot of responsibility. So prayer that I would be able to, reflect on a bit of a crazy year, take forward things that are good and that have been good development points, work on the things that I will need to develop going forward. And just, trusting that God will equip me for the role ahead, like the specifics of the practicalities of what that role actually means as a physio, when you're working with the players and when you're doing the behind the scenes stuff when you're not on camp. And just, it might provide me ongoing with that platform to just continue to cement those relationships and hopefully continue to live a life that's different in that environment and have opportunity, whether it's through what I'm doing, but also through conversations I have on what I'm saying, that basically just shine a light and give glory to God. And it's not about me, and that if people do think there's a reason why I'm different and I'm doing things, that I can always point that to Christ and that he's that reason.
Yeah, that's amazing. Thank you so much. And it's honestly refreshing to hear that perspective, as most of our conversations have really been around the men's game. And so it's really encouraging to hear about what God is doing in the women's game and the role that you're specifically playing in that. So thank you again for joining us, Fran. It's been fantastic. And if you're listening and you would like some more biblical-based podcasts and programs, just simply head over to our website, gnba.net. That's gnba.net. But thanks very much for listening. We'll see you in the next one.